Hi, I'm Kent.
And I'm Anna.
We're married, we make movies, and we believe that anyone in any circumstance can make a feature film.
Welcome to the Feature Filmmaker Podcast. If you want a career making movies, you're in the right place.
Hit subscribe to never miss an episode.
Let's jump right in. Okay. Blair, Treu, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be part of it.
Yeah, we're super excited. So background for the audience, Blair Treu is a storied filmmaker who's been working in the industry for a few decades. He started off in the studio system, working a lot of films, I believe, through Disney Channel, and then now today has transitioned into more indie, especially documentary recently, feature films, and we'll probably let Blair fill in lots of details from A to B. But we got to meet Blair recently at the Zions Indie Film Festival a little over a week ago, and Anna met Blair a little over a decade ago in sort of funny circumstances. So,
Yeah,
Well, your film killed it, by the way.
oh,
You guys
thank
did
you,
great
and
at
yours
the
did
design.
too.
yeah.
So we both
Well.
connected over that, having won some awards for our documentary features, and didn't get to see each other's films yet, but hopefully we can soon.
Yeah, but we're going to, right?
Yes, we are. We're going to. So, well, Blair, will you kind of tell us, anything we missed in your introduction, as well as what your path has looked like, short form, and kind of ending up where you are now, where you just released or are in the process of releasing a feature documentary. But I know you have a varied past with lots of projects you've worked on.
Well, it's kind of an eclectic mix because I've worked in both in feature film that is theatrically released features that were intended to be theatrically released, also TV movies, Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, episodic television, which is a completely different animal from a director's standpoint and the way you treat that, as well as documentary. And so I've been very, very lucky. I've been fortunate to stay pretty busy, and it's been almost 4 decades. So I've been at this a long time.
Yeah.
And now I'm kind of going in reverse mode. This is more for fun. I'm going back to documentary because I feel like, I just feel like that's a fun place to be. So, but for me, initially, it was the economics of it. I needed to make a living. And so I went the more traditional route. I knew early on when I was in high school that I wanted to be a filmmaker. And so I looked at film schools, and I really couldn't afford USC and NYU and those. And so I did have an interest in, I think the thing that brought me to Provo to go to BYU was the skiing initially. So I did, that was one of the things that caught my attention, and they had a film school here. So when I say here, I'm talking to you from Utah right now. So the short version is I went to BYU, I made some student shorts that got me into the industry, started at Disney, then went back out as an independent, worked as an independent director, got into the Directors Guild, and then started working on both features and television side, and to where we are today. So we can talk about that journey to whatever extent of detail you'd like to, but and I have 4 kids. They're all married, or 3 of the 4 married, and I've got grandkids. So I've been at this for a while, and I've been very fortunate to stay busy enough to, make a living at it. So it's been good.
Yeah, and take care of your
awesome.
family. That's amazing.
That's kind of the goal. But so I want to maybe poke at this a little bit, because you said I went to school, made some shorts, got into the industry that way, and that just for most of us who have graduated within the last 10 or give or take, 10 years, that sounds like frustratingly simple. And so I want to know,
it is.
Was it
I know
like a somewhat straightforward path? Like I went and I got some entry jobs and just worked up the ladder, or was it more complicated? Were there trials that you had to weave through?
Oh, there were absolutely. I think that it always frustrated me when I first started off, because I think people on my end tend to oversimplify things. And so I guess my intent was just to give you an overview, but I think, it was tough. There's no question about it. When I was a film student, I think it was my freshman year at BYU, a movie came to Utah. it was the original Footloose with Kevin Bacon.
Hmm.
So when it came to town, they said, hey, we need some interns on that. And I knew I'd never been on a movie set. I've always wanted to be on a movie set and to see how the process worked. And I did a little research, and they had openings in the camera department, the sound department, um, production, locations. It's had about 5 or 6 openings. And they also had an opening for stand-ins. And I did some research, and stand-ins, if you're a stand-in for an actor, that's like the lowliest of places of all on the set. But in my opinion, it's the best place to be because you're there to watch the rehearsals. You're there to see how the director communicates with cast and how he communicates with crew and his first AD and down the line. And so I put myself in to be a stand-in, not knowing that my height matched pretty closely to Kevin Bacon. So I was a stand-in for Kevin Bacon, who was #1 on the call sheet.
Wow.
And he was there every day. And so I was there all 58 days of production. And that is where I got my education. That's where I learned how to make a movie. I didn't even know when I stepped on the set of Footloose that movies were shot out of sequence, right? I mean, that's how little I knew. I had done some experimental stuff as a kid, but I didn't understand it. But boy, was the learning. I just felt like I was drinking from a fire hose.
Yeah.
And so
awesome.
Were you
I was
paid for
his
that, or was
stand-in,
that
and
all free, or?
yeah, and then it was a great opportunity. And then I as soon as we wrapped on that, while we were on that, I was writing my very first short film. It was about a 20-minute dramatic short. And I sold my car, sold my motorcycle, borrowed $1,500 from my dad, and I raised about $3,800 to make this short 20-minute film, realizing, okay, this is just going to be a showpiece for my work. And I hired the best actors I could, meaning, for free, kids that were in the program. And I promised them, I said, hey, if I sell this film, you're going to participate, on the back end. And everybody's going, yeah, like you're going to sell this film. And even I was like skeptical. But so I made the film and I got lucky with it and I sold it and it paid for my college education. And this is back in the day when we didn't have VHS or DVD or any of that. Films were distributed mostly through libraries, public libraries. You could go to the library and you could rent a projector and a 16 millimeter print, and you could take home. We used to watch surf movies, and ski movies, and we'd rent those. And so that was the world back then. That was the only avenue for revenue. And so I got lucky and then made 2 or 3 others and sold those. And that's how I got I'm oversimplifying again because I know, just to be brief, what happened was there was a religious fireside that was happening in Los Angeles. And they said, hey, can we show your film? And I said, absolutely, because I'm looking for a job. And there happened to be a guy in the audience there who worked with Disney. And he said, hey, I know some guys over there. I'd love to make an introduction. And so I got on. I'm oversimplifying. The way I got into Disney, that's a whole nother story. It's almost like an Hollywood kind of story, but that's probably off track from what you want to hear. But I got in at Disney on the executive track. So I was assistant to a studio executive, and he was in charge of features and all the TV product that was going on at Disney in 1985. So I was his assistant for a while. But I could see quickly that I was on a track to become a studio executive, which I did not want to be. I wanted to be a filmmaker. And so I left Disney after about a year. And he gave me the best advice ever. He says, look, just go out and start directing anything you can get your hands on. Do promos, do commercials, do training films, just to show that you can tell a story in some form or another and get paid for it and stay on a budget. And you can make a little money while you're doing it, at least be self-sustaining. And then those opportunities will open up for you to do long form. And that's exactly what happened. So I worked with, I don't know a lot about your audience. I assume they're probably from all different walks of life, different faith based situations. So in my situation, I had an opportunity to come back here in Utah and work for my church, helping them promote some of the things that they were doing, usually things relative to family and faith. And so I was starting to tell these short little stories, and I was able to work my way. And it took about 10 years until I finally had a large enough body of work that people who were making feature films reached out to me and said, "Hey, we think you're ready to do a feature." And I said, "I think I'm ready too." And that was my first Disney Channel movie. Even though
Wow.
it was non-religious, but it was still very family oriented at the
Mhm.
time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Disney Channel, and then you went on to make how much work did you do for Disney Channel? And some of those Disney Channel movies were, like you said, they weren't just straight to TV. Some of them were theatrically.
Well, one of them, there was one that was, it started off, let's see, it started off as a, it was going to be a Disney Channel movie, and then it went over to Columbia TriStar
Mm.
and Sony, and then it was supposed to be like a, kind of like an after school special type thing, TV movie to be sold directly into the television marketplace. And they always have the option that if they're good enough, they can go theatrical with them. And so that's what happened on, I think it was Wish Upon a Star. No, it was Little Secrets with sorry, these all run together. It was Wish Upon a Star was with Katherine Heigl. That was Disney Channel, and that was kind of her breakout movie.
Wow.
And that did not go to the theaters. That was just on the Disney Channel.
Mm.
And then I did some Disney Channel originals where these weren't acquisitions; these were actually movies that they were producing, and they were hiring me as a director. But Little Secrets went theatrical. That was right after I got into the Directors Guild, and I lucked out because when you get paid on a television contract, if it then gets bumped up to a theatrical contract, you get a 150% bump. So you get paid again and a half just by it going theatrical. So that was a great opportunity for me financially. So
Yeah, I wish that's how it worked for us nowadays, man.
I know so I guess I think it's the thing that I would say to folks who are trying to do this the independent route.
Yeah.
If it's kind of like a photographer. If you're trying to establish, if you're trying to reach your clients, you take your body of work in a portfolio, either electronically or you lay it out on the table and you let them see what you can do. If you're a wedding photographer, you want to have a body of work that shows great wedding photography, right? And so it would make sense then to get clients any way you can to do wedding photography and do it for free if you have to, just to show that you can do it. And then once you establish a relationship of trust, then people will start paying you to do wedding photography, right? And if you want to branch off into glamour or cars or product photography, do it for free. Do it any way you can to show people that you can do the work. And then somebody eventually will come out of the woodwork to pay you to do it. And so for me, I just had the philosophy that, hey, if I'm starting small, eventually somebody's going to come along. I mean, every time you do a project, the odds increase that you're going to get another project. And you guys have experienced this, right?
Yeah.
It's easier to raise money. It's easier to gain confidence. And the indie world is really tough. And so for me, I just decided that I would go the Hollywood route. I would try to impress the executives and show them that I had a body of work. And after I did enough shorts, after I did enough storytelling, that eventually I could handle something long form, that I could stay on a budget, could stay on a schedule. And then I finally got that shot. And once that was done, it was easier to get the next feature. So that's where our paths might diverge a little bit because, for those that are just staying the indie route and they're self-financing or they're going to a rich uncle or whatever, it's a little bit different. It's a little bit different game.
But some of the principles are the same.
Yeah.
The idea of doing something for free to show what you can do is something we teach a lot. I mean, and first features ideally should be super low budget for people who are starting out because you're doing it in your spare time, you're wearing lots of hats, you're pulling things together as a portfolio piece to show what you can do. And then you get to the point where you can quit your day job and you can do it full time. But if you do that right off the bat, you're going to be in trouble. We always say, don't quit your day job yet. Like, do this first, build up that portfolio, and then the next time around or the next time around, you might be in a position to.
And the nice thing that you have now is, remember, when I started this, okay, we didn't have internet, cell phones, iPhones. If I wanted to make a movie back then, I had to I had to shoot it on 16 millimeter print
Sure.
and then have it processed. So the field is very crowded now with product, but it's also, there's so many more opportunities now to self-publish and to put your work out there. And how back then, how could I make a film and put it out on some platform that people could see? It just didn't exist. And now it does. And so on one hand, while it's very crowded and you've got a lot of competition, at least it's there. So you start with, you make whatever movies, do shorts, make them, get relatives to see them, let them give you feedback, listen to their thoughts. Don't be so married to your own material that you can't take criticism. That's one thing that really does stand in the way of a lot of filmmakers, whether they're independent or whether they're going the traditional kind of Hollywood route. You have to be willing to be thick skinned enough to take feedback and hear people say, hey, I don't like your work, or hey, you should have done this differently, or the pacing is too slow. Or you really shouldn't act in your own movie because you're a better director than you are an actor, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and I never did that, thank heavens. But, so yeah, that's just in a nutshell. You got to be able to take feedback and then do some shorts. I mean, a long form piece. If you really think about it, if you were to take scenes from a long piece and just don't go shoot a scene, take a pivotal scene, and then just shoot that scene and get comfortable with that, and then expand from there. Start small, and bigger things will come. That's been my mentality.
It's interesting. One of the guys we've had on this podcast before is like a really excellent. He did a lot of commercial work. He still works with brands, but he's transitioned his career significantly. But his name's Jonathan Briegel, and he said something. I think I read it from one of the articles that he wrote. He said, whatever you make is going to create more of that in your career. So if you want to get paid to do such and such, whatever that kind of film is, if you work, he's like, that's why passion work is so important. Like if you're creating things just for passion, you're going to start getting paid to do that. And Anna and I have found that, I mean, I made a documentary that was 3 minutes long about my son learning to read the letter D. Took me an hour to shoot, took me a couple days to edit, and I submitted it to a competition. Nothing happened. 3 months later, I have a client reach out, asks me to write a script for a commercial, and it was about a homeschooling curriculum that promised to teach your kids how to read. In 4 weeks, they'll read their first word, and they'll be able to read before kindergarten. And I said, I think you should go documentary with this and have a lot of real moms teaching their kids. Hey, and look, I have this thing that I made with my wife teaching our kid, and he's just the right age. And they were like, this is excellent. And then I got paid to do basically that exact same thing. The curriculum they sent was very similar to whatever Anna was using at the time.
Yep.
And then same thing. Our first feature was we ate no bread because we made that feature. We did not eat. We didn't pay our mortgage with it. We didn't do anything productive financially with that movie. Yet that movie is yet to come to market. But the second feature we lived off of. We were able to survive off of the fee that we were able to charge through the packaging and the investing and just building out of that movie. And what's funny is that a little ways into production for that film, because we'd made a proof of concept, we premiered it at ZIFF the same time we premiered our first feature. And our investors were there. And that really bolstered their confidence to watch the short version with an audience and feel like, hey, this movie's starting to work. And then watch our other movie, our feature, and go, hey, like, look at these skills that these people have. And they were very, very invested, not just financially, but emotionally in us and in what we were doing at that point. So I think what you're saying, it still tracks today. It's no different. So
it doesn't. When you're spending your own money, it becomes very real that you have to be very conscious of time and resource. And it's the same if you're going to ask somebody else to invest in what you're doing, you have to treat that as though it's your own money.
Mm-hmm.
You have to respect it and know that they have the right to be nervous about it and watch it. And you know what? It's no different. Some people say, well, I want to go the indie route because I don't want to deal with studio executives. The reality is that no matter which route you go, you're going to have to deal with people who are invested in your project and have a right to ask you tough questions. So when you make a film for a studio, you're dealing with all these executives that have notes, and then you're going to get their feedback, and sometimes they're going to be contradictory, and you have to kind of work through that. That's no different than if you borrowed money from a group of people that are friends to your uncle and your parents, and they all in a nice way want to understand how to make this more successful. And there's just a responsibility to the people who have given you money, and you have to look at it that way. And it doesn't matter. Everybody has to pay the man. No, they say I'm not going to work for the man. Well, everybody has to work for the man. It's like
Yeah.
death and taxes.
Well, and especially in film, it's a collaborative or art form. So we have to learn to collaborate with people who are putting their money in, who are putting their time in, whatever they're putting in. There's going to be some of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess I'm curious, Blair, what your experience has been on this last film, because it's an indie film, and with the background that you've had with doing Hollywood and that process. What's been different? What experiences from your Hollywood background have been helpful in knowing how to approach investors, or, get all the things put together that you needed to make that happen?
Well, the film that you're referring to is called Sharing Aloha.
Yes.
It's a documentary film that really, at its core, it's a kind of a backstage, behind the scenes look at what happens at the Polynesian Cultural Center in Laie, Hawaii. But it's really told through the eyes of the students who work there, the students who come into this situation from Fiji and Samoa and Tonga and Tahiti and the islands themselves and Hawaii themselves. And the struggles that they go through to get there, to stay there and graduate from there, all with the goal of, by performing and working at the PCC, Polynesian Cultural Center, they graduate debt-free, get their college degree that they otherwise would never have had the opportunity to receive, without going into some significant debt.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a group of people who came together who felt like this is a story. There's so many wonderful stories to be told. It needed to be shared. And so they put together a little search group. And fortunately, on the tail end of my career, there's a few people out there, I guess, who know me. And so they reached out to me and said, would you be willing to help us on this? And I said, well, sure. Initially, I was thinking, I'm going to help you find somebody who can make it. I probably would have called you guys. I didn't know you guys at the time. And because I think you guys could have killed it with this. It would be interesting. I've mused about, I wonder what the Thalmans would have done with this. I'll bet they could have done it.
I'm sure you did something
I'm
great.
sure.
I'm excited to see
Yeah,
it.
we're excited to see in Florida.
So they came out, and eventually it worked out that I had time in my schedule to help them. And I kind of drank the Kool-Aid. I went to the PCC, I met these kids, and I just fell in love with the place. And I just felt, I guess, the same experience that you had earlier. I felt like, hey, the best way to tell the story is through the eyes of the students who come here,
Mm-hmm.
because nobody's going to want to watch a promotional film, right? Now, I've done promotionals,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's a great way. I might, if I can diverge for a second, a great way. When I was a student back at BYU, I was going through pilot school as well, and I loved helicopters. And then there was a local helicopter company, and I went into that helicopter company and took their tour, and they had this hokey little film, like 15 minutes long. And I just marched right into the office of the president. I said, I have to see him. And the lady said, what? So she let me in. I said, what if I promise you that I could make you a better promotional film than the one you have now? And I don't know what you spent on it, but I guarantee I can make it 10 times better. It'll be a lot more, it'll have a lot more energy in it, and it'll hold the attention, and I'll do it for whatever you spent on that first film. And I didn't know what they spent, but I was a student and I had access to student gear, right? And so he was, I guess, impressed with my boldness, and he said, sure. So I spent the summer going all over the country, filming their helicopter heavy lift operations and their medical operations. And we cut together something that was really fun. And I did a really nice promotional piece. A promotional is still a story. Okay. I'm still telling a story. In this case, I was paid a small amount to make it, but most of it went to making it itself. And then I was able to end up with a little bit of cash. It was my summer job. Now I had another showpiece. I had something to show. Now I could go to Novell. I could go to Word Perfect. I could show people that I could make these. And that blossomed into documentary and longer form storytelling, and then eventually features. So I digressed for a minute. Back to your question about
That's a good point, though. And I will say, we did a lot of commercial work and wedding videos before we got into our feature films. And so, a wedding video is a story. It's a love story.
It's a documentary, too.
It's a documentary of a live event. And we could not have made the film that we made if we hadn't done all those wedding videos.
Yeah, every film you do
Mm-hmm.
is increasing the odds again that you're going to do another one because you're learning how to tell a story. You're going out and you're shooting something, and you're going to shoot a lot of stuff that you don't use, and you're making that hard choice to cut that out and to leave this in, and that's preparing you for the next project. And so it's just repetitive. You just keep going, and I'll bet for those that do wedding videos, if you wanted to say, hey, I'd like to tell a little extra story with your wedding video, can we spend just an extra day or two to do some fun things? Who's going to say no to that?
Right.
You're just gonna make a cool little story for them, and who knows, it might go viral, as they say today. You do it as a separate little piece, and or you guys that did that cute little viral wedding video that has no dialogue, it's just music, and it tells a story about how she fell in love with him, and that's how it starts. And you're learning just with the letter D. You're learning each time you turn on a camera, and each time you're willing to make some mistakes, how to make movies. And so you start small and you just keep expanding. It's never going to just happen where somebody's just going to, oh, here's a feature film. Here's money to do a feature. It's not going to,
Right.
it's not, I've never seen I don't know anybody where that's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah. Somehow maybe Orson Welles, I don't know. But it reminds me of our mantra is no one's ever going to pay you to do something you haven't already done. And so you do it, and that's part of your schooling, rite of passage, whatever you want to call it. So catch us up. So you made Sharing Aloha, so you got to shoot it. You kind of fell in love with these kids. Um, but it sounds like this group of people, were they like just like a group of people that were really passionate about producing a project for the Polynesian Cultural Center, or was this the Polynesian Cultural Center itself approaching you, or a mix?
It was kind of a mix. The whole point was how can we get the story of the Polynesian Cultural Center out to the public? How can we share Aloha with the world? And so they felt like, well, if we can make a compelling enough documentary, and we felt like it should be a documentary. We've talked about even shooting a feature there with the PCC as the backdrop, and that might even happen. Who knows? But I'm not really pushing it. But if we can just tell that, if we can find a way to tell that story and get it up on the major streamers, or maybe do a limited theatrical or something, that would be awesome. And so then it was time to go to work and just come up with different concepts. And my basic thought was, I want to spend time with these students to get to know a collection of students, and that in the aggregate, we tell the story of the PCC. So I'd have to have some freshmen, I have to have some juniors and some seniors. And I'd like to, if we can, it'd be great to see freshmen coming in for their very first day of school, and it ends with graduating seniors. And through the process, we tell each of these little teeny stories of a kid from Samoa, a kid from Tahiti, Tonga, and so on and so forth. And by so doing, we tell the story of how the PCC works. So that's really it. So when people see the film and they laugh and they cry, what they're reacting to are these kids and the genuine stories that they tell. And then they learn about the PCC kind of in the background, and they learn about how it works and how it blesses the lives of these kids through this symbiotic relationship that exists between BOU Hawaii and the Polynesian Cultural Center. And so that's kind of how it came to be. And I just had to come up with a concept. And because I had done other documentaries that were similar in nature, to your point, they could see it. I was able to present it in a way that they could see it. I went and I said, okay, here's our lead stories. Here's who I think we should follow. This is what it's going to cost. This is how long it's going to take. And here's your budget. And we went back and forth on that a little bit, and boom, we started to make the film. And it was about a 6-month shooting process, where we would shoot for a couple of weeks and off for a few weeks, go back and shoot for a few weeks off, because we had to follow some stories as they naturally evolved.
Right.
That was the process.
So 6 months total shooting, or 6 months spread out?
It was there was about, I think it might have been 8 months of total coverage, but within that 8 months, there was probably about 2 months of actual shooting.
Yeah.
So you didn't do the whole like 4-year freshman to senior.
No, because we didn't have time to spend 4 years in production, and I also wanted to I wanted to put them in a position where they could get a return on their investment, if you will, to get the story out.
Yeah.
But still taken longer than anyone imagined that it would.
Yeah.
Because we were waiting on a big Hollywood name to be our narrator, and it kind of strung us along for a while, and that didn't pan out. So we had to go with. So we were down for 6 months just waiting. The film was done, but
Oh, wow.
so
So with the so with post, I'm curious because documentaries in our experience, because our first film was a fiction film, but we shot it almost docu coverage. It took
mhm.
3 years to edit.
Yeah.
And
Well,
that
the
was
general,
financial as well. But our second film actually edited a lot faster, but it was still a massive commitment to pull together in post. I'm curious to know what your experience was in post on Sharing Aloha.
well, it was I knew kind of what to expect because I'd been through it before on a documentary that was even larger than Sharing Aloha. The general rule of thumb is, in my experience, is that for every day in production, you're going to spend, depending on the size of the documentary and how big the scope is, you're going to spend anywhere from 8 to 12, maybe 15 days of production, so the
Wow.
post production. So that's a 1 to 15 ratio, and so you have to, when you come back with it, because you don't know which. If I was doing a documentary on you guys, for example, I want to get to know you guys. I'd want to know, which I think would be a great story, by the way. I kind of joke with you guys about
It
it,
might be kind of boring.
but I'd want to know each of your backstories. And then what I would do is I would interview you together. I'd interview you separately. I might want to follow Anna a little bit in her backstory of high school and what led her to do this and how you guys met. And I might find something along in that route, in that story, that is really interesting. And I might follow a little tributary that would take me off somewhere. And you never know if it's going to pay off. So you shoot all that stuff only to discover that you leave it all on the editing room floor.
Right.
You can't know all that stuff in advance like you do. In a scripted piece, the ratio isn't the same. It's more like 4 days or 6 to 1. So for every day in production, you're going to spend, 4 to 6 days in post. So because it's scripted and you kind of know before you go in how it's going to unfold. Now you may omit some scenes down the road because you've discovered that that scene wasn't really needed and you can pull it out. So the mantra that I have on scripted is I look for every reason to shoot it, to give it a fighting chance. When I get to the edit, I look for every reason I can to pull it out. It's kind of like a devil's advocate thing because I want to look at it through the feeling I get in my butt when I'm sitting in my seat. If I've been sitting here too long, how can I cut this down? How can I just use the bare minimum to tell this story so that I can keep the pacing moving? Same thing in documentary or in feature. It's all about, for me, again, it's looking for every reason. Can I pull this out? Can I get into the scene later? Can I get out of the scene earlier? Can I tell it with less? Because audiences demand that today.
Yeah.
So that's that. I probably went a little bit off far field on that, but
no, I love that. Those are good principles, and I think that a lot of storytelling principles apply to documentary just as they do in fiction. And so, sometimes it's interesting because we made a doc this time, and now we have people approaching us with doc ideas all the time, and yet
our next film is fiction.
And I think there's actually a ton of crossover, and you talked about wanting to see this process over time and having the students be the protagonists. So you get a sense of like someone who wants something badly, they're having a hard time getting it, and seeing that kind of a story play out. It's just a different, instead of all the work being in pre-production, a lot of it's in post as you kind of have an outline and then you get what you get and you have to put it back together and see how to tell a compelling story with that.
Yeah. It takes a lot of faith to make movies, but it takes a lot of faith to make documentaries. Specifically, I feel like you really have to just it's an exercise in acceptance.
It is. And someone in your position, with your experience, you're in a position now that you guys could go to some major backer or potential backer and say, hey, what if we told your story, but told it through the eyes of one of your employees or and then if they get excited about it, they fund it, and it's only going to make them look good. And so there's different ways to skin a cat. And when people say, well, how do you make a movie? How do you get a movie funded? It really is, unfortunately, it's any way you can.
Yeah.
Any way you can. So there's no set way, especially in the indie world. There's no set way. You partner up with a company who sells a product, or you use product placement, or you partner up with a clothing line, or there's an actor that is willing to do it for free because he just wants to get his name out there. And usually those don't work out so well because they're good actors are few and far between. But So, or a writer, or I mean, you just any way you can. You just got to be creative in the way that you approach it. And I'm sure you've had to be very creative. You guys have had to do some things that none of us will probably ever appreciate. And the fact that you do it as husband and wife, I just think that's the coolest thing ever. You know,
That's
Well,
very
thank
sweet of you.
you.
I wouldn't mind getting into that topic actually, because like, so for us, like our partnership has come with major affordances and limitations. So like, how the heck do we split our time? We don't have money to have like a live-in nanny. That would be so awesome if we had someone we loved who just like helped all the time. That would be super sweet. Right now we have school, which is a new chapter of life. And I hear that once you have one old enough to babysit, that changes things. But I'm not necessarily looking forward to becoming the world's most neglectful parent when my oldest turns 12 or whatever. But that prioritizing family, we've had long car rides where we've talked on road trips about like how do we put our career and filmmaking in its place because it's all we talk about. And like we get mad at the kids for interrupting us because it's all we talk about. And it's like we've got to like make space in our lives
Not to
to
mention
give.
just the logistics of like, having young kids. So when they aren't in school, we have to switch off working days, but we still have to collaborate together. So we'll do like a movie once a week, and that's our time to collaborate. And, we have to find ways to kind of make it
Yeah.
work. But
But I'm sure that at the same time, like in your life and in your family, you had to hurdle, filmmaking is not a family friendly industry
no.
generally, and most industries aren't, to be honest. Like it's easy to become a workaholic or whatever. So how did you navigate that from that side? Because that's something I think we like thinking about, and then I guess I'm
that
realizing
might have to be our
that might be
conclusion. Yeah.
our way out. Yeah.
Well, for me, I tried to, well, the thing that motivated me to begin with is I wanted to make films that my kids could watch.
Mm.
So that would, bring us together. And I used to watch them watching films. It was like a little free focus group test, right? And I would watch them very closely, watching scenes that I had made to see if it held their attention, if they were fidgety or if they were into it. So in the Disney Channel days, my kids were the consumers of that product. So that was one way that I wanted to feel like I was helping to contribute to, or I was making films that they could watch with their friends.
Yeah.
And when I was doing, television like Power Rangers or Ninja Turtles, when I was doing those TV episodes, I would watch them watch the shows, and that told me everything I needed to know about. So I was kind of using them in a sense,
Hmm.
but I also took them on location with me. So when I would make a film in Toronto or Los Angeles or Mexico or whatever, the family would come with, and I would that would be one of the factors in deciding whether or not to do this film over that film, because it is conducive with the summer school schedule.
Hmm.
Now I couldn't always take them. There were many times where I was on other projects and where I was just gone.
Yeah.
But it's just a concerted effort. You just make a concerted effort, and you do what you can, and there's no magic pill or anything. It's just, I think if you go into it with that mindset, you're gonna make time where you can, and try to make up for the time, that you can't. That isn't a very good answer, but that's all I have. That's all I can
Well,
say.
No,
well,
it is. It's
it's
good because it
true.
applies to everyone. That's
We've learned that, the quality of the time we spend with our family is sometimes more important than the quantity, because if I'm spending more time with them, but I'm frustrated or resentful, then
yeah.
that's not healthy for any of us. So like, if when I have a chance to be around them, like they're feeling some parental love and attention, and um, they actually enjoy me,
Yeah. Well, and
then there's like this desire to be like, this is something I'm happy about in my life. My parent, hopefully, I don't know, I can't control that entirely, but
I mean, we grew up in pretty traditional households. Ken's mom was a stay-at-home mom most of your growing up, right? If
my
not
whole
all,
life,
all
yeah.
of your life. And my mom worked when I got older, but was stay-at-home before that. And so we were used to seeing that dynamic. But, once we had our own kids and we were trying to figure out our own life, we started looking at all these families we'd seen that were successful in our eyes. Like, that's a really good family. We'd like to have the results that they have, and trying to break down what did they do. And honestly, I don't think there was really one pattern. We saw families that were successful where the dad was working all week and he would just come home on weekends, and they would just really prioritize that weekend time together. Um, and we saw families doing all sorts of different things that worked. So I think it's a lot more, like you said, about the quality of the time that you have than quantity,
Yeah.
although there's something to be said for quantity too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And within your family and friends, the sphere of family and friends, I guarantee you that no matter where you live or whatever your situation is, there are stories around you.
Yeah.
It could be your mailman. It could be your son's coach. If you've got your ears perked up to a story, grab your iPhone, take some courses on how to shoot, and do some storytelling with some simple editing products. With some simple editing software. Take your iPhone out and shoot that story. Cover it, edit it. You have tools today that we didn't have when I started, and you can do it inexpensively, and then you can play it for your friends. Now they're going to be very kind. They're going to tell you nice things, but watch carefully as they watch it, and you'll learn some things. And that's how you do short stories. I'm just saying this mostly for you to start with short stories. Learn how to tell the stories with the camera, and you're going to learn about, the audio needed to be better. Oh, there's some music issues here. Buy some, use some really cheap, free production, free, what do they call it? Fee free, what do you call it? Royalty free music.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways. I'll finish with this because I know you guys got to go. I had a friend who wanted to break the world land speed record on his little Harley 125 for that category. That speed record was, I think, 68 miles an hour at the Salt Flats. He's a grandpa. So I decided last year to tell that story. I decided to go out with my iPhone. I say, I'm only going to use my iPhone. Now, this is a guy who's already made feature films. I've had a crew of 140 people, and it's just me with my iPhone. And I had more fun with that. I'm in post on it right now. We're editing right now. And just for fun, I'm probably going to take it out as a short. It won't be in competition because it's, I don't want to take anything away from anybody else, but I do want to show it in front of audiences. I want to see the look on his face when he sees his story told in front of an audience. And I did it all on my iPhone. You can do that now. So I'd encourage your audience to start small and just keep working, tell small stories, and just get engaged in that process. Make mistakes and be okay to make mistakes, and shoot too much and get in the edit and don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's what I would tell the folks in the indie world who are trying to work their way into something that's larger. Start small, gradually work your way up to something that's a little bit bigger.
Well, that was
really
awesome.
great.
You left me extremely excited to see this short film about the land speed record, Grandpa. So
yeah, it's called World's Fastest Grandpa.
That's awesome. Great. I love it.
Not coming to a theater soon.
Well, I'm still excited. I hope it goes on Vimeo and maybe gets a staff pick or something.
Yeah, we'll post it. We'll see what happens.
That'll be awesome. Well, Blair, thank you so much. We really appreciate the time that you were able to take and set aside for this and for everything you've shared. It's really helpful, and it's also just a pleasure to get to talk to you whenever we can. So thank you.
Yeah.
So I look forward to seeing you guys in Orlando.
Yeah, we'll post a link to Blair's latest film, Sharing Aloha, in the show notes, so you guys can check that out.
Yeah, great. I guess the trailer, right? Yeah, the trailer's available, so you can watch the trailer.
Whatever you want me to share, I'll post it in there.
Awesome.
Hey, thanks so much.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, you'll love the Feature Filmmaker Academy, a program designed to teach anyone how to finance and finish a feature film.
There are many resources teaching you how to do a great job, but what they don't teach you is how to get the job in the first place.
You cannot have a career making feature films until you've made at least one. Anyone can make a feature film using our proven model.
It's risk-free. If you follow all the steps in the program, you'll finance and finish a feature film, or we'll give you your money back.
Learn more at invisiblemansion.com/feature filmmaker or click the link in the show notes.
If you find this free resource valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you leave us a review or share it with another filmmaker. We'll see you next time. Bye.